Tá fáilte Ruth Oireachtas in teach, and congratulations on the birth of your son. I welcome this legislation because if it wasn't introduced, we were going to literally go over a cliff at the end of the month. But this is, and has to be, the beginning of moving forward on this issue. Because as we move through the generations and life gets more complicated, the issue of rights by long-established usage becomes a vaguer and vaguer, more difficult concept. And the reality is, of course, as long as people agree, we can all keep away from the courts. But when people disagree, ultimately, the court is the only place you can resolve it. Now, somebody said, when they were speaking here this afternoon, that you could set up an arbitration board. Well, my understanding is that no matter what kind of arrangement like that you put in place, that ultimately everybody has got the right to go to court. And that is the ultimate arbitration board, because that's what a court is, a civil court. It's the ultimate arbitration board in the state. And that everybody has the right to go there and to defend or vindicate whatever they believe is their right. And unfortunately, people often are more than willing to go to court over property rights. People get very possessive over even very small pieces of property, and they also get very possessive about, and we see this all the time, people trying to take possession where people have traditionally walked. Now, my first very significant, I was familiar with this issue living in traditionally, you could go anywhere and people were fairly easygoing and there were lots of mass paths and so on. Although it is interesting to record that in a book written about the Cong area in the 19th century, it was well recorded that the local people put up with every kind of hunger and privation and whatever until somebody happened to close down a mass path. I think it was the Guinnesses. And in other words, the big house. And it's very odd that under a previous owner, a similar situation arose around Ashford in the present generation. And it just shows you how deep these things run within communities and so on. And therefore, the idea that the old arrangement was ideal is a rather innocent view of life. And I have to say, we have experienced in recent times people trying to take possession, who come in, buy maybe a home, don't go with local habits, we'll put it that way, and try to exclude people from going to beaches or going to beers or going to different places. And this is a matter of serious dispute then within communities. And in the end of the day, those with the deepest pockets are in the best position to fight these things. So the idea of moving forward on this, I think, is very, very important. And Minister, I hope that when we pass this bill, and it's very necessary, and the deadline will come and go, and it won't be mandatory to register these, to hold on to them. But I hope the matter isn't left at that, and that we actually deal with this issue into the future and make it as easy as it is legally possible to do, and make the law as easy as possible. But I do not foresee, for people who are of different views to their rights, that cases won't wind up in the courts. I'd like to see the Solomon that will come up with a plan like that, but I can't see how you can do that. But I do think the process where there is agreement should be as simple as possible, straight to the PRA. Where there is disputes, yes, maybe if there was some dispute resolution, but I think, unfortunately, ultimately, the courts are the ultimate dispute resolution. I can remember when we started working on rural recreation, of course, this issue came to the fore, where people were coming to us, and lots of people were very positive about allowing recreational use across land. but other landholders, and it took one, for example, just to object to block you, opening up some maybe recreational paths, and then there'd be an argument, well, they always used that, and that was used, and so on. But again, you are back to this, whose right is going to be vindicated? And it is a non-satisfactory situation. I think, too, that following the 2.9 law and the 2.11 law, some issues actually arose as a consequence that maybe had not been foreseen. And I'd see that as a learning exercise, that we now address all of these issues, because every problem actually should lead to a solution. I know that some issues have arisen because of the law, and I'm not talking about the ones that you're doing away with now, but some other issues arose. I think that it's time now that we dealt comprehensively with this issue, and that we tried to have a clear right established that isn't expensive in future generations to vindicate time and again. And that's what I think was the purpose of the 2.9 law. I fully agree that it didn't, in the end, give enough time for people, and that the whole process got very complicated. But the idea that it wouldn't be useful for the vast majority of these to be written down and recorded and established, I think is a rather innocent view in the way the modern world has developed. And therefore, I do think encouraging people to establish these rights and have them recorded is something that we should definitely work towards and definitely seek to get implemented. So, Minister, I welcome the bill in the House, but I see it as step number one. I think we have to be very clear that this is the beginning of a journey, not the end of a journey, and that this whole very complex issue needs to be addressed comprehensively.